let's begin. We are 17 days into a declared ceasefire in the Iran war, and the creator of predictive history is framing this moment not as a pause, but as a theatrical deception. He begins by dissecting the proposed Iranian peace terms, a list so favorable to Iran that he calls it a complete U.S. surrender. His analogy is telling. A shopkeeper who instantly agrees to an outrageous price is signaling that something is wrong with the goods. In his view, Trump offering these terms is not good faith diplomacy. It is proof he is not serious. That is the core assumption, and from it, everything else follows. He then layers on 3 observations from what he calls individuals on Twitter. First, the continued U.S. naval deployment to the region. Second, Iran's claimed Mosaic defense, a decentralized military structure that, he argues, makes a centralized ceasefire impossible to implement without sparking internal conflict. Third, the ongoing U.S. air bridge moving troops and material into the theater. His synthesis: the political leadership in both countries has lost control of the war. The militaries are now on a path to a bitter end, and the ceasefire is merely a PR stunt. There is a cold logic here, and in the immediate context of late March 2026, it would have sounded grimly plausible. The U.S. had just suffered significant losses in the Strait. Trump's approval was falling. Iran had demonstrated an ability to hit back asymmetrically. Announcing a ceasefire from a position of perceived weakness could easily be read as a buying of time. But I want to pause on the Mosaic defense concept. He presents it almost as a dead man's switch, a system designed to fight on automatically even if the central command is decapitated. If true, this would indeed make ceasefire implementation a near impossibility. But is it true? Or is this a speculative military theory presented as established doctrine? The creator treats it as factual, but I notice he provides no citation beyond unnamed Twitter accounts. This is a pattern, taking a plausible-sounding strategic concept and elevating it to an immutable structural constraint. It makes the subsequent prediction, "This war cannot end except in total victory or defeat," feel inevitable. That is a powerful narrative device. He then pivots, as he often does, from the specific to the abstract. We move from the ceasefire to what he calls the midterm examination, where he takes questions from his audience. And here, the model of the world he has built over previous videos is laid out more explicitly. He is asked about the role of eschatology, end times beliefs, in shaping global events. His answer is a revealing piece of self-description. He compares history to a river current, chaotic on the surface, but with underlying patterns that can be read. Those who try to read these patterns he calls occultists. They develop eschatological narratives, stories about where history is heading. These narratives then attract the rich and powerful, who form secret societies to harness this knowledge for their own benefit. These societies, in turn, promote agents, figures like Trump or Putin, to act out the narrative. It is not quite a conspiracy theory, because he emphasizes that no one is fully in control. The agents have their own agency, the elites switch loyalties, different societies compete. It is, in his words, a dynamic fluid game. This framework is elegant in its explanatory reach. It allows him to claim insight into the story that is driving events, without needing to identify every actor or secret handshake. It turns geopolitics into a kind of grand narrative analysis, and positions him, the analyst, as someone who can read the river. Now, he applies this lens to China. His argument is striking. China is not a civilization or a true nation-state, but a construct of empire, a mirage created by the Western-led system embedded with its universities, media, and economic models. Therefore, if the system comes under strain, as it is now with the war, China will also come under strain. Hence, he says, China is desperate for peace in the Middle East. This is where his bias as a Chinese citizen speaking to an international audience becomes analytically interesting. He is not promoting a triumphant China narrative. He is arguing the opposite, that China's rise is fragile, derivative, and vulnerable to the same stresses as the West. That is a sobering, even contrarian position, and it lends his model an air of ruthless objectivity. He then fields questions about agency, prediction, and causation. He acknowledges the difficulty of distinguishing correlation from causation, a rare moment of methodological humility. He also admits that his own fame has made him a player rather than an observer, complicating his ability to predict objectively. This is a sophisticated metacognitive point, one that many would-be prophets never pause to make. Finally, he returns to the war. Asked whether the Strait of Hormuz can be bypassed with pipelines through Oman, he dismisses the idea. Iran's goal, he says, is not merely to close the strait, but to expose the vulnerability and fragility of the global economy. Pipelines can be droned. The dependence itself is the target. And on Trump, is he erratic, stupid, or calculating? The creator leaves the question hanging, but his earlier framing suggests Trump is an agent whose actions are shaped by larger eschatological scripts, even if he believes he is following his own divine calling. So, where does this leave us? This video is a fascinating hybrid, part real-time conflict analysis, part esoteric worldview lecture, part audience Q&A. The strength lies in the internal consistency of his model and his willingness to follow its logic into uncomfortable places, such as China's fragility. The weakness, as always, is the tendency to present speculative constructs, the Mosaic defense, the occultist secret society layer, as established gears in the machine, which then make his conclusions feel foreordained. As for the ceasefire itself, history, even the very recent history of April 2026, shows it did not hold. So his skepticism was justified even if his reasoning sometimes relied on unproven military theory. Ultimately, this is not really a midterm examination of the audience. It is a demonstration of his own model's explanatory power. He is showing that, from the chaos of daily headlines, he can extract a story. And that story feels coherent, interconnected, and grimly inevitable. That is the source of his appeal. In a world that feels out of control, he offers a map even if some of its continents are drawn from conjecture.